What the hell is going on with Thom Tillis? You saw the announcement he made yesterday. We're going to break it down for you. We're going to show you how dangerous it is, how destructive it is, how suicidal it is. And then I'll make a bold prediction about what's coming next with Thom Tillis. We'll get into it in just a moment. And Joe Biden has emerged from his hole, and he's worse than we ever remembered. He also betrayed this nation, betrayed our president, betrayed our foreign policy, betrayed our allies, and he betrayed Kamala Harris. Not bad for one sit down interview with the octogenarian. We'll give you all of those details. Also, Pete Hegseth finally announces or gets to affirm his transgender policy at the Pentagon. And CNN's response, probably the most insane panel segment you've ever seen. We'll get into all of that and a whole lot more coming up right now. We are brought to you by Birch Gold. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. It's a catchy tune, isn't it? This July, coming up, there's going to be a global summit of the BRICS nations in Rio de Janeiro. When my baby goes to Rio, they try to mess with the valuation of the dollar. I think that's the original lyric of that song. It's the block of emerging superpowers. It includes China and Russia and India. Even Iran gets a seat at this table. And they're meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling it the Rio Reset. Have you heard about this? This could be a real issue. And, well, the BRICS nations are pushing forward with these plans. The global demand for the U.S. dollar could very easily decrease, could bring down the value of the dollars that are sitting in your savings right now. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, but you should prepare for it. The Rio Reset in July is going to be a pivotal moment. So why don't learn now about diversifying your savings into gold? See if that is the right thing for you. Just get information about gold, especially facing this incredible hit on the dollar. Birch Gold, they can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free info kit on gold by texting my name, Larry, to 989898. They've got an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau, tens of thousands of happy customers. Let Birch Gold arm you with a free, no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset. And by the way, real fast, I know a lot of people are like, oh, gold's so high right now. I've already missed the boat. I should have listened to Larry a year ago. Well, that's true. But trust me, there's more coming down the pike. And all we're asking is for you to get some information so that you're armed and you can then make a decision that's best for you. So text my name, Larry, to 989898. Do it today. All right, so North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis made a huge announcement yesterday having to do with the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Now, this is basically the prosecutor for D.C., but the U.S. Attorney also handles a lot of other things as well on the federal level and investigations into the federal government. For instance, if the FBI or the Justice Department is investigating some kind of corruption or leaks or misuse of funds or what have you within the federal government, oftentimes it's the D.C. U.S. attorney that will take on that case. It's a very important and influential U.S. attorney role. They also act as the sort of attorney general or district attorney for the city of Washington, D.C. Ed Martin's been in that position. He's facing Senate confirmation right now. And by the way, as somebody who works on a daily basis in Washington, D.C., things are better already, just 110 days in. And we've actually got bad guys getting prosecuted and put away. Even the liberal Democrats on the district council in Washington complained about Biden's guy for releasing hardened criminals, acting like these ridiculous Soros prosecutors, letting criminals who were arrested off with a slap on the wrist or without a day in court at all. Even the liberal Democrats in Washington were complaining about the predecessor. Now we got Trump's guy. Now we got a DOJ guy in there working for the Trump administration and actually enforcing the law. So what the hell is going on with Thom Tillis, who yesterday announced that he was backing away and will not support Mr. Martin for this position in the Senate? Here's what he had to say, and then we'll break it down.
He is, I don't believe he's being advanced to the markup. And I met with Mr. Martin. He seems like a good man. Most of my concerns related to January 6th. And he built a compelling case on some of the 1512 prosecutions that were probably heat of the moment bad decisions. But where we probably have a difference is I think anybody that breached the perimeter should have been in prison for some period of time. Whether it's 30 days or 3 years is debatable, but I have no tolerance for anybody who entered the building on January the 6th. And that's probably where most of the friction was.
I see. So he disagreed with you on that?
Well, now I have to say that Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining how there were people that probably got caught up in it. But they made the stupid decision to come through a building that had been breached and that the police officers and others were saying stay away. So the difference wasn't that they should be charged, in my estimation, it's by how much. That's an argument I'm willing to have, but we have to be very, very clear that what happened on January the 6th was wrong. It wasn't, it was not prompted or created by other people to put those people in trouble. They made a stupid decision and they disgraced the United States by absolutely destroying the Capitol. And I can't have any patience.
It sounds like your concerns were not of.
But let me be very clear, though. Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining the one area that I think he's probably right, that there were some people that were over prosecuted, but there were some, 200 or 300 of them, that should have never gotten a pardon, and he agreed with that. But the disagreement there had more to do. If Mr. Martin were being put forth as a U.S. attorney for any district except the district where January 6th happened, the protest happened, I'd probably support him, but not in this district.
When you said he's not being advanced to the markup, was he operating under that understanding that he's not being advanced through?
Well, I think Mr. Martin, I'm sure they're looking through it. I mean, be clear, some of the deadline has to do with the length of time he can operate as acting, and the administration can work through that if they want to have more time and potentially work them through. But at this point, I've indicated to the White House I wouldn't support his nomination.
All right. So, and he couldn't get out of there fast enough, right? All right. That's 2 minutes and change. We're going to go through that entire video in just a moment together. And this whole idea about how much time the administration has to have him as an interim prosecutor and what happens if his time is up. I believe it's 125 days. That's coming up. We'll get to that in a moment as well. First, though, this whole idea that this is all about January 6th. Boy, that's a clue as to what's really going on here. Anybody with a brain, anybody who's watching what's going on, everyone who has seen what's transpired in this country for the last couple of years and certainly in the last 6 months knows exactly the story about January 6th and where the people of this country are on that issue and what the reality is as it relates to the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. But before I get into that, here's John Strand. John Strand was one of those people who, as Thom Tillis just acknowledged, got caught up on January 6th. Watch what he has to say.
I'm John Strand. I was persecuted by a weaponized Democrat DOJ for peacefully walking through the Capitol on January 6th. I was sentenced to nearly 3 years in prison, not for violence, but for refusing to accept a plea deal that required me to lie and affirm the government's fraudulent narrative. Now, Senator Thom Tillis is opposing Ed Martin, one of the few men who actually understands the injustice that I and hundreds of others have endured. This isn't politics. It's a cover-up, a cowardly effort to protect political insiders and corrupt officials who abused their power to silence dissent. If Tillis won't support President Trump's nominee, a man clearly dedicated to justice, then I will dedicate myself to ending Thom Tillis's career. I will work tirelessly to see him exposed, primaried, and removed from office. We will not let cowards cover for tyranny. Confirm Ed Martin. And if you're watching this, share it. Make sure Tillis knows we see him and we won't forget this.
Yeah, and Tillis does know. That's what makes this move so curious. You see, he's up for re-election in 2026. The primary process could begin any day now with various people throwing their hat in the ring. Some people are saying it's going to be potentially Laura Trump, who comes from North Carolina originally. She lives in Florida now, of course, with her husband, Eric. All right, so what's this all about? Well, listen, Thom Tillis has been an outspoken critic of the activities of January 6th and directly linking Donald Trump to those activities. But that's not all. You see, back during the Robert Mueller Russian collusion special prosecutor investigation hoax, this guy, this Republican, decided to team up with Chris Coons of Delaware, you know, the Democrat who ended up being the chairman of Joe Biden's eventual presidential campaign. Yeah, he teamed up with Coons to try to craft legislation to prohibit Donald Trump from firing Robert Mueller, the special prosecutor. Something that he wasn't going to do anyway, but this guy was so anti-Trump then that he wanted to bend over backwards to prevent the president from firing Robert Mueller, basically giving Robert Mueller carte blanche to do whatever he wanted outside of the Constitution even. This guy is an anti-Trumper. And this is what he said in the wake of the January 6th events.
I think it's bull. I was down there and I saw maybe a few tourists, a few people who got caught up in things. But when you see police barricades breached, when you see police officers assaulted, all of that, or you had to be in close proximity to it. If you were just a tourist, you should have probably lined up at the visitor center and came in on an orderly basis.
Okay, so that's just incoherent what he said there. Let's just be clear. I don't think he was there, actually. Maybe he was. Maybe he got out of the Capitol building. Maybe he walked outside of the steps and maybe he watched everything happening. I think he watched it on television, and those police barricades, we've all seen them, they were bike racks. You know, any Republican who is speaking about January 6th, either at the time or now after the fact, like Thom Tillis is, if they don't utter the words, why didn't Nancy Pelosi call in for more police? Why didn't Nancy Pelosi respond to the sergeant at arms and the chief of the Capitol Police to bring in more cops like they were asking, like they were requesting? Why did police officers stand and hold open the door to allow people to walk in? That's just incoherent what he had to say. And it's deceptive. But this has always been a thing with Thom Tillis on January 6th. So now we go back to the statement he made yesterday about why he won't support Ed Martin, which, by the way, you just heard him say, oh, I'd support him anywhere across the country. I'd support him in any other district, just not D.C. because of January 6th. Okay. Oh, and by the way, that just want to be clear, the video of Thom Tillis just now talking about releasing footage of January 6th where he called it bull. That was when Tucker Carlson got footage of what happened inside the Capitol. That was his response to Tucker Carlson releasing that video. All right. So now let's break down this because I just alluded to the fact that anybody with a sentient brain, anybody who is watching the news for the last 6 months knows a couple of things about January 6th that I guess strangely Thom Tillis doesn't know, or he thinks you're stupid. He thinks, well, the viewers on CNN where he gave this interview, because that's Manu Raju of CNN interviewing him, they're stupid, and maybe they are. They're certainly uninformed. And he certainly thinks the people of North Carolina are stupid, or he thinks that the people of North Carolina don't give a flip about who the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia is. He's wrong there. They don't care who it is, but they care that Donald Trump wants this guy there, and that should be enough for Thom Tillis, because that's what Republicans do. When there's a Republican in the White House, they support the Republican's nomination, at least if they want to be a member in good standing of the party. That's what party politics is all about. You know how I know? Because I see the Democrats do it all the time. Because they all walk in lockstep behind their leaders. They do whatever Nancy Pelosi tells them to do. Not us. No. We got smart guys like Thom Tillis who are bigger than the party. Okay. So let's break this down, shall we? Because there's a lot of golden nuggets in here that people with brains in their noggins will actually figure out.
He is, I don't believe he's being advanced to the markup. And I met with Mr. Martin. He seems like a good man. Most of my concerns related to January 6th. And he built a compelling case on some of the 1512 prosecutions that were probably heat of the moment bad decisions.
Okay, real fast. Those 1512 prosecutions actually mean hundreds of people that were all part of the same prosecution. Set that aside for a minute. This is all about January 6th. What's one thing every American knows right now about January 6th? Well, actually, two things that every American knows about January 6th. Number one is that we had 4 years of conversation about January 6th, including the kangaroo court primetime produced ridiculous committee hearing that was completely one-sided, where Republicans weren't even represented on the panel. The only two Republicans that were there were the ones handpicked by Nancy Pelosi, not Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader at the time for the minority party. First time in history that we've ever seen that happen. But it was talked about for years. Everyone in the media talked about it. They tried to prosecute Donald Trump about it. Biden and Harris spent their entire campaigns talking half of the time about January 6th. And then the people voted. And, oh, by the way, what did Donald Trump say when he was running for office last year? January 6th was bull, and I will pardon everybody that was involved. And we, the people, got to vote based on that. We got to vote based on everything that the media said about January 6th, everything Liz Cheney said and Nancy Pelosi said, and everything that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said about January 6th. And we used our brains, we used our vote, and we let our voices be heard. And we said, we don't care, Thom Tillis. We don't care, Thom Tillis. In fact, we agree with Donald Trump, Thom Tillis, but Thom Tillis knows better than you. So that's the one thing that everybody knows. So what's the second thing everybody knows about January 6th at this point? That apparently Thom Tillis thinks you're too stupid to know. The other thing everybody knows about January 6th is on day one, maybe week one, Donald Trump issued pardons to every single person involved. Donald Trump has already pardoned everybody, and you may disagree with that. You may think it was a bad idea. Thom Tillis apparently does too. But here's what you need to know. The fact that the president has already issued pardons to every single person involved in January 6th means that it is literally irrelevant in the question as to who should be the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Whether it's Ed Martin, or whether it's Merrick Garland, or whether it's Kamala Harris, or whether it's the resurrected soul of Robert Bork, or whether it's me. No matter who is the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, they can't do anything about January 6th because everybody's been pardoned. What's he going to do? Over-pardon them? What's he going to do? Not charge them even more? What's the concern? What's the argument? This has to do with January 6th, he says, which is completely off the table because they've all been pardoned. But there is another aspect of January 6th that Thom Tillis might be concerned about, and we'll get to that in a second. The last thing he just said there, though, about Ed Martin making a good case about what now?
A compelling case on some of the 1512 prosecutions that were probably heat of the moment bad decisions. But
yeah, heat of the moment bad decisions. It's a hell of a turn of phrase, isn't it, Mr. Tillis? Heat of the moment. But yeah, these are heat of the moment bad decisions. They probably got caught up. They probably shouldn't have been prosecuted. These people's lives were ruined. People were sent to prison, like for years. They went into debt. Their homes were invaded at 6 a.m. by armed SWAT teams. Oh yeah, he made a compelling case there. Probably they shouldn't have. What could we find the video, please, of Thom Tillis railing against the last U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia because of his overzealous prosecution for people who were caught up? No, he just shrugs it off. There's no video of Thom Tillis angry about the Constitution and the full force of the Justice Department under Joe Biden being thrown at people who got caught up on January 6th. He didn't care about that. He didn't call a press conference. He didn't bring in Manu Raju of CNN saying, I have something to say about this overzealous prosecution. He didn't say a damn thing. The only thing he wants attention for is for stopping Ed Martin, who's right about that. And he just shrugs it off. Yeah, it's probably heat of the moment, probably some bad decisions on prosecuting them. Boy, he's playing pretty fast and loose there with people's lives, isn't he? But it gets worse.
where we probably have a difference is I think anybody that breached the perimeter should have been in prison for some period of time, whether it's 30 days or 3 years is debatable, but I have no tolerance for anybody who entered the building on January the 6th, and that's probably where most of the friction was.
I see. So he disagreed with you on that?
Well, now I have to say that Mr. Martin did a good job of explaining how there were people that probably got caught up in it, but they made the stupid decision to come through a building that had been breached and that the police officers and others were saying stay away. So the difference wasn't that they should be charged, in my estimation. It's by how much. That's an argument I'm willing to have, but we have to be very, very clear that what happened on January the 6th was wrong. It wasn't, it was not prompted or created by other people to put those people in trouble. They made a stupid decision and they disgraced the United States by absolutely destroying the Capitol. And I can't have any patience.
So the Capitol wasn't absolutely destroyed. That's just hyperbole. Let's be generous. The Capitol was not absolutely destroyed, number one. But did you catch that? Let's be clear. There was nothing about January 6th that was prompted or instigated by other people. You see, because everything that he said about January 6th right now, as we just explained rather fervently and energetically, is irrelevant because everybody's been pardoned. So now what was that? What was that part? You know, nothing prompted this. Nobody was behind this. You see, this is where January 6th actually is relevant. It has nothing to do with whether people were charged or not, or improperly charged, or improperly imprisoned, or any of the other things, or the fact that Thom Tillis lied, or at the very least, as generously as I can be, was mistaken when he suggested, and actually he didn't even suggest, he said outright that Officer Brian Sicknick was killed after being attacked and suffered injuries of January 6th. That did not happen. Even the Washington Post has conceded that the autopsy shows that his death, tragic as it may be for Officer Sicknick and his family, were not related to the events of January 6th. Thom Tillis is on the record still saying that, though. No, you see, he just gave away the store right there about what this is really about. He's not concerned about the people who were arrested, charged, or convicted and imprisoned on January 6th. He's rightfully saying that they have a different opinion, he and Ed Martin, about that. But they've all been pardoned, so it doesn't matter. So why does this matter? Why is January 6th important? Listen to it again.
My estimation, it's by how much. That's an argument I'm willing to have, but we have to be very, very clear that what happened on January the 6th was wrong. It wasn't, it was not prompted or created by other people.
Right there. Prompted or created by other. How do you know that? How do you know that? How does he know that? How does he know that? I mean, we finally got a revelation just a couple of months ago that we know for a fact that there was a certain number of FBI informants who were in the crowd. There were a certain number of people who had forewarning about this. We know that now. That's a fact. It hasn't been investigated. It wasn't part of the January 6th committee investigation. There was a bunch of stuff they never looked at. They still never looked at why Nancy Pelosi didn't call in the National Guard when it was pre-approved. In fact, the key witness that said he witnessed Donald Trump telling the Pentagon 3 days in advance to give Nancy Pelosi or Muriel Bowser as much National Guard support as they want. He pre-authorized it, the president did. If it's requested, it has to be requested. President just can't call in the National Guard, but he can authorize it in the District of Columbia after it's been requested. So he pre-authorized it. And who was the key witness that saw the president? Well, it was the chief of staff of the Pentagon at the time. Do you know who that was? Kash Patel, who's currently your FBI director. You see, Kash Patel is the FBI director. He could investigate what happened on January 6th. In fact, for all we know, he's got some investigators right now looking into January 6th and who did what and what decisions were made and what the FBI knew about it. And if anybody needs to be prosecuted because of their actions on January 6th within the United States government, guess who would be in charge of the prosecutions? The U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. The person Thom Tillis is now trying to remove. The person Thom Tillis will not support in confirmation. See, this is about January 6th, but not about all the individual American citizens who rightly or wrongly were arrested and prosecuted and imprisoned, because they're off the table now. They got pardoned. No, this has to do with the involvement of the government. This has to do with the involvement of the Pelosi team. This has to do with people on Capitol Hill. This has to do with the FBI and what they knew about January 6th and when they knew it and whether they did anything about it. That's what he wants to prevent. That's what he's trying to stop. This isn't about individuals on January 6th. It's about the deep state. This is about the government. This is about protecting or preventing an investigation into all of that. Who is Thom Tillis? What is this guy doing? What kind of judgment does he have right now as a United States Senator for the Republican Party, representing North Carolina? North Carolina, really, Tar Heels? Is this you up there? Who is Thom Tillis? Well, Thom Tillis is a guy who loved Merrick Garland. You know, the guy who was in charge of all of those prosecutions that even Thom Tillis himself is now saying, yeah, well, you know, maybe some people got caught up in that. That's unfortunate for those people. Unfortunate, you ruined their lives, but you loved Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland voted to confirm. Thom Tillis voted to confirm Merrick Garland, said he had an unbiased application of the law and his longstanding reputation of bipartisanship. Really, Tom, you want to revisit those remarks? You still think that based on Merrick Garland's behavior as Attorney General? You know, when he empowered the FBI to go after Catholics who speak Latin at Mass or parents who got angry at their local school board and treated them as domestic terrorists. Is that what was it again? Unbiased application of the law and a longstanding reputation for bipartisanship. Seriously? This is the judgment that North Carolina has in place right now as their senator? Who else is Thom Tillis? Thom Tillis is a guy that left Pete Hegseth dangling during his nomination process. He came around eventually. Sure he did. When pressure was put on, then he saw that there was no political tenable position. When Pete Hegseth dared to fight back and defend himself, when Thom Tillis saw that he was out on a limb. But this is who Thom Tillis is. So what's really going on here with Thom Tillis? Well, like I said, I think that he's trying to protect the deep state. He's trying to protect some of his colleagues, by the way. Senators always circle the wagons to protect each other. They hope to get that kind of protection in return someday as well. Adam Schiff was one of the happiest people yesterday when he learned that Thom Tillis had blocked this nomination. What does that tell you? Yeah, that Adam Schiff. You see, every single thing that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi are empowered right now to investigate with regard to deep state behaviors during the Trump administration the first time around and during the Biden administration, like censorship of you, like the decision to allow Anthony Fauci to run your life, all of those things that may border up to criminal behavior. The prosecutor for those criminal cases, should the evidence be found to bring an arrest or charges, that prosecutor would be the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Thom Tillis doesn't think the North Carolinians care about that. I think they do. I think he's hearing about it. And here's my bold prediction for you. I think by the end of the day today, Thom Tillis will do exactly what he did when he found out what happens when you FA with Pete Hegseth. He's in the FA stage right now. FO is coming. FO will come when he starts getting primaried for his Senate seat. Now, maybe he doesn't care about his Senate seat anymore. Maybe he thinks that he's going to be able to be just fine as a K Street lawyer or something. But he has any interest in being reelected in North Carolina, which I think is done right now regardless because of this behavior. But I think he backs down. I think he backs down by the end of the day today, actually. In fact, by the time you're watching this, he may have already backed down. If he didn't, it means he doesn't intend to run for re-election or he's already given up the ship. Maybe he'll switch parties and run as a Democrat. He might as well, because he supports Democrat nominations for things like Attorney General more readily than he will for a Republican nomination. Why is this important? Why should you care about it? Well, because if in 120 days, Ed Martin is not confirmed by the Senate, which as of now, it won't happen, then the Chief Justice of the District Court of the District of Columbia gets to make the selection. That would be this guy, Judge Boasberg. You know, the guy who has single-handedly blocked almost every single move that the Trump administration has attempted to make with regard to securing our border and deporting criminal illegal immigrants. This is the guy who thought he could tell the president of the United States to turn a plane around midair over Central America. He gets to be the one to decide. Anybody think that Thom Tillis' political career can survive if that's the case, if that's what ends up happening? That Thom Tillis either has a political suicide mission, he's strapped the bombs on, metaphorically speaking, and he's ready to push the button, he doesn't care, or he's about to find out exactly what the people of North Carolina think and what the people of the United States of America think about his decision that he was so proud of yesterday. What was missed was as he was leaving the corridor there, he actually said to one of them, well, you know, yeah, I guess I could change my mind. I don't know what would change my mind, but I guess I could change my mind. His mind's going to be changed. And it's going to happen really fast, I think. Otherwise, Thom Tillis is D-O-N-E, donezo. Hey, guys, I want to ask you to become a member of the Town Hall VIP Club. It's a great club because you get great benefits. First of all, you get all of our content at all the Town Hall sites, commercial-free, ad-free. Also, you get exclusive content just for VIP members. But finally, and I think most importantly, if I may, if you like this show and you want to support it, the fact of the matter is ad revenue on the platform that you're watching us right now on is, let's say, inconsistent. You try to sort of budget out and plan for what your year's going to look like, and you can sort of figure out what your revenue might be based on clicks and views, and then you find out, not really. You can get all the clicks and all the views and all the viewers that you want, but then ad revenue, it's, let's just say, inconsistent, unpredictable. The best way for you to support this show, and we appreciate all of your support, is to become a Town Hall VIP member. And right now we've got a special. If you use my name, which also happens to be the name of the show, Larry, go to townhallvip.com. You use my name, you get 50% off that VIP membership. And like I said, exclusive offers, exclusive content, whole lot of cool stuff. Plus, you help our show survive. Thank you very much for that. I won't ask you again until tomorrow. So yesterday, the Supreme Court lifted a temporary injunction on what's been called the transgender ban from the military. Now, it's a little more nuanced than that. It's not necessarily a transgender ban, but let's just go with the vernacular. It was lifted, and Pete Hegseth actually delivered remarks sort of emphasizing the new approach that the military is taking now. This is new from the Obama administration, who first instituted the open acceptance of transgender individuals in the military. And then under Biden, it was put on steroids, where we were paying for everybody's procedures. We were even using drag queens to help recruit people into the military. And shockingly, using drag queens to try to recruit warriors ended up not recruiting warriors, recruited more drag queens. We're told it's about 8,000 at this point of people who are identified as transgender in the military. The disposition of those existing service members is yet to be determined, actually, whether they get honorable discharged or moved into another classification. Not sure, waiting for that announcement. But Hegseth was quite clear on what this means for the future of the military, at least under his watch, and the Commander-in-Chief, President Trump's watch.
No more pronouns. No more climate change obsession. No more emergency vaccine mandates. No more dudes in dresses. We're done with that shit.
And now that's how you recruit warriors. And of course, the recruitment numbers show it. You've got huge increase in the military recruitment numbers right now because, well, like I said, using a drag queen to try to get people to join the Navy or the Marines or the Army seemed to be less effective. So CNN wanted to do a very high-minded and intellectual panel discussion about this issue. So, of course, they brought on a dude who dresses up like a woman. Not just any dude. This dude was in the military and advocates for more transgender individuals to wear the uniform. And of course, you bring in somebody who is personally directly affected and is a personal advocate for this issue, someone who literally earns a living on this. Go ahead and Google their name and you'll see all of the speeches that they make money on and all of the advocacy that that this guy does. This is his profit center right now. So, of course, this panel discussion is going to get personal, very personal. And we're here for it.
Hurts lethality and it hurts readiness. What do you say to that?
Well, there's no evidence of that. I think that, if that was the case, we've seen transgender people serving honorably for the last several years. And what has changed between now and then? They've just woken up to a new administration who has a different outlook on their ability to serve. So I think that, if you talk to people who are serving on active duty alongside transgender troops, they're not making these complaints. The leaders in the military are not making these complaints. These are political complaints about military service. So I think that all of the courts that have looked at this issue and looked at it, have said there's nothing in fact to back up what the government is claiming here. In fact, the judges challenged them to produce evidence, and they couldn't produce any evidence. So I think it's a really dark day for our country, where basically we're allowed to discriminate against a class of people.
All right, you'll see the rest of it, I promise. I just want to jump in real fast here. When he says, by the way, fooling anyone? Anyone fooled? Anyone at all? Thank you. Never. when he says, if you ask anybody who's currently serving whether they have a problem with this or whether it affects their service, let me assure you of something. They're not allowed to tell the truth about that. They are not. Whatever corporation you work in right now, whatever DEI, human resources training you have to sit through every quarter or every year, that indoctrinates you into what you're allowed to say on the job or not. Let me tell you, it's times 100 in the military. It has been beat. And I know Pete Hegseth has lifted all the DEI requirements and all that stuff. Okay, that's only 100 days old, dude. Okay, if you've been in the military for like 4, 5, 6 years, you have been indoctrinated with that. It's like you don't say a damn thing. You don't say a damn thing. Whether it makes you uncomfortable, whether you don't like showering, whether you don't like changing your clothes, whether you don't feel safe knowing that that person is fighting shoulder to shoulder with you, you won't say. So it's so disingenuous. You ask anyone in the military, they won't say that they have a problem with it. They're not allowed to say they have a problem with it. Okay, number one. Number two, it's like, oh, it doesn't affect our ability to fight a war. Then do you realize the kind of hormone medication that this person takes on a daily basis to alter their appearance and alter their voice even? And if you're in the middle of the transition process, especially if you've had surgery, I don't know the disposition of this person's nuts and berries, but if you have had a surgery, then it's ongoing, just like the type of hormones that you have to take on a regular basis to stay healthy. Kind of hard to do when you're in the military, especially if you're deployed, especially if you're in a combat situation. Did you know that if you have a peanut allergy, you cannot enlist in the military? That's one of the questions. If you're being recruited, you're in a recruitment office, you want to fill out your application so you can be in the Army or be in the Marines. One of the questions, do you have a peanut allergy? If it's yes, you're sent packing. Sorry, dude, we can't take you. Sorry, ma'am, about your peanut allergy, but we can't take you because it's a liability. You might be exposed at any given time. We can't be prepared for that. But if you're transgender and you intend to go into the military and have the military and the tax dollars of the American people pay for your procedure and your ongoing medical treatment, including hormones on a daily basis, oh, that's fine. That's just fine. Just don't get a hive if you're at a Reese's peanut butter cup. Then you're out. So seriously. All right, let's let the panel discussion continue.
If they can't produce evidence that this actually does, in fact, have an impact on readiness, I mean, how is this not then just discrimination?
Well, it's the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who, according to our Constitution, is the head of the military. I mean, regardless of anyone's opinion or anybody's, whatever side you're on, whether you're for it or against it, at some juncture, the president is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he has and should have broad latitude to determine how the armed forces should be operated. And so I think that's what he's doing here. I think that's ultimately what the court said today, was that the president is the commander in chief, and we gotta respect that.
But I mean, to her point, if there's not a downside, and it's been going on for years now, and I mean, I'm just presenting your argument to them.
Yeah.
What is the argument other than Trump, Hegseth just doesn't want trans people in the military?
Well, I mean, I think that the president will ultimately see. I think that's why the court is allowing the president to move forward with this until it works itself through the court system. Maybe the Supreme Court will be the final arbiter here to say, yeah or nay, you can do this. But ultimately, I think the court is showcasing deference to the executive, saying that, look, you're the president, you're over the military. You do, for the most part, get to sort of dictate the standards of our military. And I don't really see how you can push back against that. Again, we'll see what happens in the court.
I can.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I can. What if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military? Do we give deference to him on that? No. No, wait a second. It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous because you're discriminating against a group of people in a very similar way. No,
I knew you were going to say that. But
excuse me. Well, I'm glad you.
I'm going to leave this one alone today.
I'm curious. Why is it ridiculous? I mean, you just said the president should be the one who just decides.
Right.
So if he decides, he wakes up tomorrow and says, I think it's bad for morale, it's bad for cohesiveness, for there to be black people in the military, Latino people in the military, just in her hypothetical scenario, what's the difference between that and what we're seeing here?
I mean, Are you really going to go down this ridiculous?
I'm just.
I'm sorry. Is
I'm-
she,
I mean,
I'm
this is
asking
ridiculous.
based-
This is a ridiculous argument.
Well,
Okay.
The president,
what they've already
the president and the
about
secretary of
let me
defense,
just-
the president and secretary of defense have an argument here. They believe that readiness and unit cohesion and overall operations of the military are impacted by this. That is their opinion. And that is the opinion of the commander in chief, who the Constitution gives broad latitude to run the armed forces. So that's their opinion. You're allowed to have one. You're allowed to have one. You're also allowed to run for president and become commander in chief yourself. But until you do, he's the commander in chief.
I have to just say,
That's-
I didn't
you know.
hear an answer to the hypothetical, right?
That's a
I just didn't hear it.
hypothetical, though.
I
That's
didn't,
a
I mean,
ludicrous.
okay, the definition of discrimination, according to the American Psychological Association, discrimination is the unfair or prejudicial treatment of people or groups based on characteristics such as race, gender, age, or sexual orientation. What is the difference between, prohibiting certain groups like transgender people from serving versus, people based on their race or even their gender, frankly?
I personally think there's a difference, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well,
So he's going to leave it at that. And I want to just jump in here real fast, not to be, that guy or anything and give you the actually, but there's a very real and good answer to this. And I want to provide it for you in case your liberal brother-in-law at the dinner table this weekend, or the crazy, blue-haired woman in the cubicle 2 down from you wants to raise this same stupid argument. Well, what's keeping him from saying that black people can't be in the military? It's called an immutable characteristic. It's what almost all discrimination law is based on in this country, an immutable characteristic. You can't change the fact that you're a man or a woman. Your sex is an immutable characteristic, and you can't be discriminated against your sex. Your race is also an immutable characteristic. You can't change if you're black. You can't change if you're Asian. You can't change if you're white. That's something immutable. It has nothing to do with you. You have no control over it, and you cannot be discriminated against if it's an immutable characteristic. Did you hear the first example I gave you? That's the question answers itself. Is being transgender an immutable characteristic? Well, no, it's not, because being transgender literally means you are changing your gender. You are changing and going through various processes to re-represent how you were born. All right. And I know that everyone's going to say, oh, it has to do with, you're born in the wrong body. And it's really just, you really are a woman. You were just accidentally put into a man's body. Okay, where's the evidence of that? Show me the scientific proof that somebody was born in the wrong body. Okay? The only thing that is tangible physical evidence that you can show me is that you've got one of these, and now you want everyone to believe you don't have one of those. You have changed it. That means, by definition, it is not an immutable characteristic. That's the answer. But for them to raise this as an issue is so obviously offensive to anyone who voted in the last election, because number one, they're saying you're a bigot for voting for the man who said exactly what he's doing right now. He promised he'd do it, and now he's doing it. You had your chance to make your case. Kamala Harris could have made the case saying, hey, we should have as many trans people in the military as possible, and I'm going to do whatever I can to recruit. In fact, we need a whole branch of military service for transgender individuals. She didn't do that. She tried to run away from this issue, right? Because even she knew it was a loser. Okay, so number one, it's insulting to all of you who voted for the exact policy that's been enacted right now. But number two, it's insulting to you because they obviously are trying to make you say, well, we know that Trump's a racist, so since he did this to transgender people, he's going to do this to black people. And that's offensive to you too, because it suggests that you support a racist. It's like they've never, ever learned a new political argument. It's been 10 years now. It doesn't work. Try something new. Also, this whole idea that they can't prove any evidence that it has affected morale or the ability for the American military to fight. Let me just tell you, year-by-year recruitment levels have been devastated since this policy got put in place. Let me give you some quick numbers. 2015, total enlistments, about 150,000. 2016, little under 150,000. Same in 17. 2018, as this policy starts to robustly take place, down to 148,000. 2019, just under 148,000. 2020, ditto. 2021, 145,000. These are recruitments in the military. 2022, when they started utilizing all of the social media propaganda to get a TikTok drag queen in his Navy costume to try to encourage more transgender individuals joining the military. Precipitous drop from 2021 to 2022. It went from 145,000 to 140,000. Ditto 2023. Now suddenly in 2024, just toward the last quarter, after Trump was running for president, saying he was going to do away with these policies, and as Hegseth was named Secretary of Defense, you saw a huge uptick. In the final quarter, as the election was moving forward. And right now, all of the goals are getting hit. That's a tangible result of a broad base of policies in the military, but you cannot tell me that this is not one of them. All right, I'll let the panel continue here, but just wanted to jump in because any opportunity they have to play the race card and to paint Trump as a neo-Nazi racist Klansman who can't wait for segregation, because by playing that card, what they're really saying is that you are a supporter of a neo-Nazi Klansman, which means, of course, you're a Nazi yourself. That's what they do because they loathe you. And they think that you're hateful. They think you're a bigot. And, of course, they think you're stupid. Because you actually have to go out of your way to make the argument that this is probably not the best thing for military cohesion and not the primary focus of making sure that you're the best war-fighting machine. And understand that that's the argument here. The commander-in-chief, the secretary of defense, and those on this panel who are supporting this decision are saying that they're making this judgment based on what is best for our military and turning our military into the best warfighting machine that we can have. The dude who wears a dress and all the other activists on the panel who are saying he'll do this to black people next, they're making the argument either Trump's a bigot or what does this mean to the individual? So, right? What does this mean to the poor transgender person who wants to wear the uniform? Wearing the uniform is not a right. Okay? And when your entirety of your argument about our military and about what's the best for our military and our Department of Defense has to do with what the individual needs and desires, you've lost the argument. Because that's not what our military is about. Our military is not a construct of the federal government to make sure that everybody feels good. That's not the purpose. And that's all they're reduced to here. All right, watch how the argument transpires. It's Looney Tunes.
I will say, do you believe that race and are you saying that the quality of race and the quality of transgender are the same?
I'm just asking the question because I think you're making there's a distinction, but you're not explaining why.
No, I'm asking you guys brought up the hypothetical. Are you arguing that someone's race is the same as someone choosing to become transgender?
But your argument, you've made the argument twice that the commander-in-chief's opinion is all that matters. You've said that twice now.
Well, under the Constitution, yes.
So if he wakes up tomorrow and says it's not okay to be gay or lesbian and serve, because that's his opinion, there's nothing to back that up. They meet the physical standards. They meet the intellectual standards. They have voluntarily decided to serve their country, to give their life for this country. So many of us don't have to. That it's the opinion without any basis in fact that's what matters more than the Constitution of equal rights and equal protection.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the other thing, or there's a few things that bothered me about this, and mostly it was the language of the policy, right? When you're reading at some of these words, transgender people as inherently untruthful, undisciplined, dishonorable. That's like a very weighty thing to say about people who are courageously deciding to protect this country. The other problem, Scott, is that it's never enough. It's bathrooms today. It's sports today. It's sports tomorrow. It's the military today.
No, it's also sports today, by the way.
Yeah, it is sports today. And
80% of Americans agree, by the way.
Oh, that's fine. And 80%, guess what? The majority sometimes is wrong. That also happens, right? Because the majority used to believe that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was somebody who was a threat, that somebody who was not a good American. The majority of people used to be against civil rights. Were they right? No, they weren't. And so the whole point is when you target one group, and inevitably that line moves to everybody else. And I'm not saying he's coming for black people tomorrow, but considering that this is a military or this is a a leadership that is already using DEI as code word for Black people already when it comes to the military. Suddenly, when you don't protect the most vulnerable, you wind up making it worse for everybody else that's in the
What do you mean by
marginalized
vulnerable?
community. You don't think trans people are vulnerable in this country?
So is it your position that the commander in chief should recruit people who you're describing as vulnerable into the
No,
lethal
he
fighting
should
force?
he should recruit people who want to serve and protect this country. And it's really kind of ironic considering he dodged the draft that he suddenly has an opinion about.
You're also
what's
talking-
going
you're
on.
He has an opinion because he got won the election.
All right. So this is a fascinating development here, as if you've noticed, all of the people on the panel who are supporting this policy are women and a dude who identifies as a woman and a Black woman to boot, who all make the argument that if the president is allowed to do this, he's going to do it to gay people, he's going to do it to Black people because Martin Luther King, which is a fascinating argument. And I think that they should go with this. And this should be the rallying cry for the next several election cycles, actually. Because, as Scott Jennings very calmly and rationally pointed out, 80% of the American people are on the right side of this. And I'm so sick of hearing about how conservatives are on the wrong side of history. You're on the wrong side of history on this, wrong side of the history. Trust me, these are the people who are on the wrong side of history on this. And history will bear that out. The damage that they have done to our society and to our culture and to children is immeasurable at the moment. We will be able to measure it, though, soon. Also, it's interesting to me as the Democrat Party and the woke political equation in this country continue to hemorrhage Black male votes, that they want to double down on this and say that, you know, this is the same thing as the civil rights struggles and Martin Luther King's marches in the 60s. And then say, and by the way, if you want to be true to Martin Luther King and the civil rights struggle, then you got to be in favor of transgender individuals playing sports, going into the locker room with your daughter or son, and being in the military. Just wait and see how the Black vote in America, especially Black males, ends up reacting to that message, because that's the definition right now of the woke Democrat Party, and they're not turning around from it in any way whatsoever. And God bless them. This is where they are. But the fact that that conversation even took place on a major cable news network, all right, not major, CNN, is indicative of how shallow the arguments are and how shallow the discussion is. And I feel for Jennings and Shermichael there, where, you know, they say, well, if he could do this to transgender people, what's stopping him from doing to Black people? And literally their answer was, are you nuts? Are you nuts? That's your argument? And the answer is yes, they are, in fact. They're nuts. Hey, I haven't told you to buy our swag recently, and that's mostly because I don't have my cup. My Larry cup. It's upstairs. I was drinking bourbon out of it. But go to story.townhall.com, story.townhall.com. Buy all of our swag. We've got swag for the show, but we've got swag for all the other Town Hall stuff. And there's some pretty good Trump MAGA swag there as well. So check it out. It's story.townhall.com. You're going to love it. So Joe Biden has emerged from his hole, and he has delivered an interview to the BBC Radio to be exact. But of course, as radio is these days, you can't do a radio interview without, well, a camera. There was a time when I would refer to that as television. But who am I? Just a radio host. All right, so here's part of the interview, and there's a lot to unpack here. The first thing, though, before I play the very first clip, is I want you to remember that every single Democrat leader in this country and every single one of their toady supporters in the media, right up until mid-June, were assuring you that this man was fully equipped and sharp as a tack to be the commander-in-chief and leader of the free world and head of the executive branch of the United States government for 4 more years. He'd be 107 days in to that 4 more years as of today. Take a look at him, and then also have a listen to what he has to say.
I can hear your passion. I can hear your anxiety that the world is changing the way it has. And for a long time, you believed, you said, I'm the man who can stop Donald Trump. And you did once. And in the end, you withdrew from that election campaign at the last minute. It's a question, you know, lots of people ask you, Mr. President. Did you leave it too late? Should you have withdrawn earlier, given someone else a bigger chance?
I don't think it would have mattered. We left at a time when we had a good candidate. She was fully funded. And what happened was I had become what we had set out to do, no one thought we could do. I become so successful on our agenda, it was hard to say, no, I'm going to stop now. I meant what I said when I started, that I think I'm prepared to hand this to the next generation. It's a transition government. But things move so quickly that it made it difficult to walk away, and it was a hard decision, but
regrets though?
No, I think it was the right decision. I think that it was just a difficult decision.
Wow, he looks good though, doesn't he? And sounds great. And he really is sharp as a tack, on top of his game. They were all right. He's more than prepared to be president for 4 more years. Never forget that. I got to tell you, there's a lot to unpack here, and I plan to unpack it with you here because it's just glorious to see that Joe Biden is desperately trying to salvage his completely shredded and ruined reputation, and good riddance to it. It belongs on the ash bin of history. He's an odious, horrible man with an odious, horrible family. He's a terrible individual. He ruined people's lives, and I love that he's this desperate that he's doing this. But on the whole, the Democrat Party, they will continue to lose. This is like a generational problem for them. And don't get me wrong, I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. I've told you this. You know this about me, unlike Jake Tapper, who will never admit that he even votes, let alone has a political opinion. Please, we're over that, okay? We're done with the mythology of unbiased journalism. There's no such thing. We're not robots, okay? Until we're replaced with AI, we all have an opinion. I'm honest, and I tell you my opinion. I want Republicans to win, good Republicans. I don't want Democrats to win. That said, I actually do want a robust opposition party in this country. Unlike Democrats who love dominating places like California and New York and Illinois, city of Chicago, and every major state. They love one-party rule. They love dominating, right? They don't want to have any kind of opposition party. I do. I want the Democrats to be better because they make Republicans better, frankly. I want them to love this country. I want them to actually have some kind of effective alternate approach to doing things in this country that don't undermine our nation's values. That would be wonderful. But the party will not be able to recover from 2024 until one leader emerges. I don't know who it's going to be, but I'm telling you, if they have any viable chance to move forward, one person needs to emerge and say, stand up and say to the American people, we screwed up big time and we lied. We covered up the reality of Joe Biden. We did that because we wanted to stop Trump. We did that because the only thing our party has stood for the last 10 years is stopping Trump. And so that's all we knew. And we thought Biden was the only way to stop Trump. And so we lied. We knew he was diminished. We knew he couldn't be president. We knew that he was a liability. And we betrayed the American people by lying about it. And we were wrong. Now, it's going to take some major for somebody to step up and do that. But I'm telling you, until they do, the Democrats will be a second or third tier party in this country. They will not be able to survive because we all saw it. We all lived through it. And we will never trust them ever again until somebody, a leader, steps up and says, yeah, guys, we completely screwed up. But it ain't going to happen. All right, so that's number one. But let's go back now and listen to what he had to say here. It's a hell of a question. Do you think you waited too long to leave the race?
Believed. You said, I'm the man who can stop Donald Trump. And you did once. And in the end, you withdrew from that election campaign at the last minute. It's a question, you know, lots of people ask you, Mr. President. Did you leave it too late?
By the way, real fast, as you see him meander through this answer, the interviewer there for the BBC sort of gave the show away there by saying it's a question that everybody's asking. Everybody wants to ask. A lot of people are asking. In other words, as Joe Biden collected whatever paycheck he got for this interview at the BBC, he's going to be on The View tomorrow too. Boy, can't wait for that. You've got to think that Biden's people, whatever people he's got left, Dr. Jill or whomever, had to have told him, they're going to ask you about leaving the race. You should have an answer prepared. So even this, he wasn't ready to answer. But I mean, if you're going to do an interview and you're Joe Biden and it's 100 days after Trump was inaugurated, you're going to be asked about the last election and you better have your answer straight. This is pathetic. All right, but listen to the answer. Do you think you waited too long to leave the race?
Should you have withdrawn earlier, given someone else a bigger chance?
I don't think it would have mattered.
I don't think it would have mattered. So he's saying that if he had left earlier, it wouldn't have mattered. And let's just be clear here. Mattering in this context means Trump loses, right? It would have made a difference. If you had left earlier, would it have mattered? Would it have made a difference? And the difference, of course, means Trump loses. And Kamala Harris or somebody else, if he left early enough for there to be a primary, would have run against Trump and possibly would have won. Biden just conceded that it wouldn't have mattered whether he left a year before and said he wasn't running for re-election, months before with enough time for there to be a primary, even a convention primary. He just conceded that Trump's victory was inevitable. That's remarkable. No one on the Democrat side has said that. The excuse they're making is, well, Kamala Harris only had 100 days and she ran a perfect campaign, but there was no way to really get things together. And she had all these factors working against her. But they've never said, yeah, Trump was going to win anyway. So he's claiming now that Trump was inevitable, but then listen to him meander into why it wouldn't have made a difference. Because it's borderline incoherent, which again, really shines the light on how ready he was to be president for another term.
We left at a time when we had a good candidate. She was fully funded.
Did you hear that? So again, Kamala's people are saying, well, she only had 100 days and all this was working against her and she already had an uphill climb. Would have been a miracle if she would have won. That's their story. Here's Biden throwing Kamala under the bus. Listen, we had the candidate. She was the vice president. And did you catch that? Fully funded. Fully funded. In other words, his money, the money he raised. She took over his campaign operation. And all of that money that was for Biden-Harris became for Harris and then Harris-Waltz. This is a bitter, angry man. I busted my ass raising all that money, making all those promises. Selling my son to Ukraine and China, and for what? She couldn't even win the race. Good candidate, fully funded. Twist the knife, Joe.
And what happened was, I had become what we had set out to do. No one thought we could do. I become so successful on our agenda. It was hard to say, no, I'm going to stop now.
All right. So what he's saying here is that his first term was such a success. They did so many great things for our country that it was impossible for him to step down and not run for a second term. He had to stay in there. Because that's the real takeaway from 2024, is that everything was so amazing. And Biden had been so successful. But wait a second. I thought that he was down in the polls and he was going to lose miserably to Donald Trump if he had stayed in. And if he was so successful and everything was so wonderful, why didn't his handpicked successor do better? Does this make sense to you? Anyone? And if you check the polls leading into the election about the American people's satisfaction with the economy and with crime and with national security and with border security and with immigration and with multitudes of other policies, were they on the upside of anything? Did anybody rate Joe Biden as a success? And now this is how he's trying to rewrite history? This is sad. This is pathetic. This is worthy of all of our mockery and ridicule. And he's a horrible human being. And I'm happy to dance on his almost grave, frankly. I mean, if you're a Democrat and you were hoping that Joe Biden and Jill Biden would sort of do the classy and dignified thing like Ronald Reagan did when he left office, and pretty soon afterwards it was discovered that he had some mental and cognitive deficiencies, and so he quietly sort of played out the rest of his days. He did come back and deliver a great speech in '92, I believe it was, for George Herbert Walker Bush. But for the most part, he kept a low profile. If you were hoping for that for Joe Biden, boy, were you wrong. Get used to this. Get used to this. And I'm here for it. Terrible human being. But if that were the entirety of this interview, it would be, a one-off, and we'd be done with this segment, and we would be able to make fun of him and be completely we'd ridicule the idea that he's conceding that Kamala Harris was a disaster and that he's bitter about that and that Trump was going to win anyway and that he's lying about his, all of that stuff. That'd be fun. That'd be great. But there was more to this interview. There was more to this interview, and what you're about to see is actually some of the most despicable behavior that I've ever seen from a former president. I want to remind you that this is Joe Biden sitting in a foreign country, in a foreign land, on foreign soil. Well, wait, actually, do I have that right? I shouldn't, I don't know that he's in England. I apologize. But he's speaking, and if he is, that makes it that much worse. And unlike Jake Tapper, I'll correct myself mid-sentence. But he is talking to a foreign news agency, an exclusive one-on-one interview that he has not granted to an American agency. He's talking to a foreign news agency for a foreign country in Europe. And he is about to trash our president. He is about to trash our president and my president's foreign policy in the middle of a war that he allowed to happen on his watch. This is not only despicable, it's un-American, it's unpatriotic, and frankly, beneath the title of former president. Yes, he was in Delaware. Forgive that mistake. He is not on foreign soil, but he is speaking to a foreign news agency. And watch this.
What did you make of those scenes in the Oval Office? President Trump and President Zelensky?
I found it sort of beneath America, the way that took place. And the way we talk about now that, well, it's just the Gulf of America. Maybe we're going to have to take back Panama. Maybe we need to acquire Greenland. Maybe Canada should be. What the hell's going on here? What president ever talks like that? That's not who we are. We're about freedom, democracy, opportunity, not about confiscation.
Wow. By the way, they are about confiscation. Just ask the IRS. That whole, hey, this isn't who we are, would have been a great thing for you to say during the election, because I'm sure that would have convinced the American people. Oh, no, that's right. That's all you ever said. And everyone knew that it was hollow platitudes and bromides from you, you empty shell of a human being. But then it got worse. Let's
turn to Ukraine, can we? Because you compared the war in Ukraine with the Second World War. President Trump is now saying, look, if you want peace, Ukraine is going to have to give up some territory. Some people think that is common sense to say that. Do you think it's not common sense? It's perhaps modern day appeasement?
It is modern day appeasement. Look, listen to what Putin said when he talked about going from Kyiv into Ukraine and why. He believes it's part of Mother Russia. He believes it's a historical right to Ukraine. He talks about Eastern Europe. What this man wants to do is reestablish the Warsaw Pact. He can't stand the fact that the Russian dictatorship that he runs, that the Soviet Union has collapsed. And anybody thinks he's going to stop is just foolish. My fear of the consequence is that some of the NATO countries are going to decide that maybe, especially those along the border with Russia, they just say, we got to make an accommodation. We got to make an accommodation. We got to give Russia more space. We got to go on. We have to yield to the pressures, whether they're economic, political, or military.
All right, so here's Joe Biden accusing Donald Trump of modern day appeasement, which, by the way, really rich coming from a BBC interviewer because, hey, dude, it was you lot who voted for Chamberlain in the first place. But we'll set that aside for a minute. You got it right with Churchill, so all's well that ends well, I suppose. Modern day appeasement, says Joe Biden about Donald Trump trying to reach a peace agreement between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, which, by the way, once again, is exactly what he promised to do when he offered himself up as a candidate to the American people. This kind of rhetoric that you're hearing from Biden and from Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney, of all people, during the campaign was exactly what the American people heard. And they said, no, yeah, we don't like what you've been doing in Eastern Europe with this war. We like what Trump is saying, so we want to go that way. So you can call it modern day appeasement, but what you're really doing is criticizing the American voter, Joe Biden, for actually rejecting your approach. That said, what you're about to see from this BBC reporter is fantastic. So the BBC he says this is appeasement. You can't let Putin do this. Putin's upset. Putin wants to regain the Eastern Bloc. Putin's going to do all of this. Don't let that happen. That's appeasement. Trump is going along with that, and I'm afraid some of these NATO countries might do the same thing. And here comes this BBC reporter. It's so great. And he says, excuse me, Mr. President, but when George Bush was president in 2008, when you were a senator, that's when Russia invaded Georgia. In fact, Barack Obama dispatched you when he was a candidate to go and talk to the Russians at that point, and you came back and said that they wouldn't do that again. And then Barack Obama became president. Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. She went to Russia with a reset button and said they were going to reset the relationship with Russia. And Hillary Clinton's family ended up making a ton of money giving speeches there. Bill Clinton, tons of money making speeches in Ukraine or in Russia. And your son then made a bunch of money doing business with Ukraine and with Russia. And then when Barack Obama was running for re-election, Mitt Romney said Russia's a real problem. And Obama said, hey, the 80s are calling it. They want their foreign policy back, right? And that's when Russia, after Barack Obama, said during a international meetup with the Russian president at the time, leaned in and said, hey, tell Vladimir that I'll have more flexibility after I win this next election in 2012. And then he won that election. And then Vladimir, now that Obama had flexibility, invaded Crimea and took over the peninsula. And you, Joe Biden, you were vice president. You didn't do a damn thing about it. Neither did Barack Obama. Was that appeasement? Well, wait, my question isn't there yet. Let me just continue my question. Then Donald Trump won the presidency and Russia did nothing. They didn't invade anybody. And in fact, Trump convinced NATO, those nations that you're now wagging your finger at, to stop funding Vladimir Putin's Russian war machine by paying for their oil and gas with the Gulf Stream, or for the pipeline that the Russians had set up for Europe. Trump was warning them that if they keep buying gas and oil from Russia, they're just funding the machine and they're going to be beholden to them. And so that's when America offered an alternative. And that's when America became energy independent. And then that's when the price of oil and gas on the international market started to plummet. And Russia couldn't afford any more tanks or troops. And they weren't doing anything. And they didn't invade anybody. But then you became president again. You had your disastrous pull out of Afghanistan and showed how weak America was. And then because you decided to stop America's energy independence and bring in all these windmills to power people, then the price of oil and gas shot up through the roof. That funded Putin's war machine. And the next thing you know, tanks are rolling in to Ukraine. And I remember right before those tanks rolled in, Mr. President, Joe Biden, you were asked about it and you said something stupid like, well, it depends on whether it's a major incursion or not. We might do something. We might not do anything. Kind of signaled to Vladimir Putin that you were a weak leader and he could just do whatever he wants. And that's exactly what he did. So given that history, Mr. Biden, is it really right for you to be lecturing Donald Trump, the one man who, as president, didn't oversee any sort of foreign conflict or any new war and kept Vladimir Putin in check? I mean, who the hell are you, after that track record with Russia, to lecture anybody? Okay, so that's what the BBC reported. Let's watch that. Oh, I'm sorry. The BBC reporter didn't say any of that. He didn't say anything close to that. He didn't mention one part of the disastrous, failed policies of this guy, Joe Biden, his boss, Barack Obama, and their pal, Hillary Clinton, when they had the reins of power for 12 years. It would have been a great moment for that BBC journalist to follow up and say, you don't have the best track record here, do you? He didn't have to say it quite as frantically as I did, but he could have, because that's the truth. Fact check every single damn thing I just said. That's this guy's record with Russia. And now he's lecturing Trump. He's lecturing the countries on the border with Russia about what they should do. Where the hell are you? Absolutely despicable individual. And BBC, next time you're interviewing an American politician and former president, why don't you bring in an American? Hire a Yank as your wingman. Maybe he'll help you with some of these questions, or at least a follow-up.
And the way we talk about now that, well, it's just the Gulf of America. Maybe we're going to have to take back Panama. Maybe we need to acquire Greenland. Maybe Canada should be. What the hell's going on here? What president ever talks like that?
CNN's outraged at such a thing. By the way, the whole maybe we should take Panama, what president talked like that? That would be Teddy Roosevelt, actually, who built the Panama Canal and said, you bet your ass this is ours. Also, Ronald Reagan talked about taking back Panama immediately after Jimmy Carter gave it away. In fact, every president leading up to your pal Jimmy Carter was just fine with Panama being a U.S. territory. Who talks like that?
You've talked about a great threat to democracy. Do you really believe that there is a greater threat now to democracy than at any time since the Second World War?
Yes, I do. Because, I mean, look at the number of European leaders in European countries. They're wondering, well, what do I do now? I mean, what's the best route for me to take? Can I rely on the United States? Are they going to be there?
Isn't this exactly what he said when he was running in 2020 and the American people rejected that after seeing how great things were when Joe Biden was in office? I got to tell you, there's even more to this. They haven't even released the whole thing yet. But we're going to probably call it a wrap on that segment there. But number one, incoherent, feeble, no voice at this point, no concentration, can't keep a thought straight as he's responding to these interview questions. This is edited, by the way, so it probably is set up to make him look better than he really did perform. A bitter, despicable man with absolutely no recognition of what a failure he was as president. And now this is how he's going to conduct himself as a former president. Until the Democrats can step forward and recognize what a disaster he was and continues to be, they're done. They're donezo history. And by the way, don't forget, on The View, coming up next, that guy and Dr. Jill with a joint appearance. Something tells me we might have a few clips to show you, but we'll wait till next time. Thank you for watching today. I appreciate it. Wow, I went a little overtime, but it's because I've been missing you guys because of my days off there. I didn't have days off. We had pre-recorded interviews. I'm rambling now. Angela, thank you for the super chat. $2. Somebody please primary Tillis in all the rhinos. I think he's going to get primaried either way, but I truly do believe by the end of the day today, he's going to do exactly what he did with Hegseth. He rattled the saber. He even tried this with Kash Patel too. And the next thing you know, he was like bringing in Kash Patel to the Senate. He's a weird dude, this Thom Tillis. And he likes to grandstand and throw his fists around and get a lot of attention, but something tells me that this ain't going to fly, what he's attempting to do here. Thank you, Angela. Another and a $10 super chat from Angela, because that's a different color. Democrats crying due process for illegal criminals. Where's the due process for Lincoln, Rachel, Joycelyn, Travis Wolf, and all the other American victims? Our priest SCOTUS asked the same question next week. They're still doing the due process thing. Our viewers are too smart for that. We blew apart all the due process lies, didn't we? Thank you for that $10, Angela. I appreciate it very much. Angela's very, very active today. Thank you for the $2 super chat. We love Town Hall VIP. Great stuff every day. Yeah, you became a member of Town Hall VIP. I hope you used my name. You get a discount with that. We do. $5 super chat from Angela. Angela, we've missed you. This is fabulous. Men playing dress up as a mental illness. Whatever happened to Section 8? Yeah, Corporal Klinger finally gets his discharge, right? Thank God U.S. military is becoming lethal again. I feel safer already. Thank you, Angela. that as well. Whew. Oh, and Richard Murray. What's wrong, Richard? You got in there. Angela dominated. Richard Murray with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Richard. Cross-dressing deviants are not even deployable. For them, a military uniform is just another costume for them to cosplay in. You know, I think that's one of my the most disturbing parts of the whole TikTok, Instagram promotion they did with these drag queens, is that they showed them in their military uniform and then immediately cut to them in their drag queen outfits, which suggests that it's just another costume. When you know the men and women who died in that uniform and take pride in that uniform, when you see veterans get back dressed in their uniform for a Veterans Day parade or for the Memorial Day acknowledgement that we're about to have here in America at the end of this month, it's just despicable that the message that's sent is, hey, you can cosplay as a soldier as well. Yeah, we're getting back to fundamentals here and what our nation needs for a good fighting military. The war fighters are back in charge. Oh, and another $10 super chat. I'm sorry, I blinked. Hang on. It's a wonder I don't drink more during the show. I try to steal sips when clips are playing, and you can't see me. Sorry. This is overtime, so I feel like I can drink in front of you. Richard Murray, thank you for that $10 super chat. When Trump survived the assassination attempt, the Democrats knew they could not win. The entire Harris race is about salvaging as many of the down ballot races as they could. You think? Maybe. I still think they thought they had it. I actually do. You could be right. I think they thought they had the win, leading right up until Election Day. And in fact, even people inside the Kamala campaign have said that. And there's nothing in it for them to suggest otherwise, I don't think. But we'll never know, I suppose. You could be right. If the whole point was to salvage down ticket races, I don't think they did much of a good job. Unless you're talking about those senators, the Senate candidates in Michigan, Wisconsin, who suddenly started running ads saying that they wanted to work with Trump. I think they knew, or they certainly knew that they weren't going to win in their states. That could be true. All right, I think that's it. Kevin, do you have anything to say for the good of the nation?
God bless America.
Anything else?
I hope your cough gets better.
You know what? I got to go run a few miles. That'll clear it up. It's the allergies. Right? Should I shave tomorrow? Oh, guess where I'm going tonight, Kevin?
Disneyland.
Well, no, I'm not in California anymore. Think of the most fancy pants thing you can do in Washington, D.C., short of a state dinner.
Oh,
pretty fancy pants. It's an event.
Some sort of gala.
Ish. I am going to the opera at the Kennedy Center.
Oh.
How about that? Because we run that place now, don't we? I am the guest of Ambassador Richard Grinnell. He has invited me to the Kennedy Center tonight. I'll be sitting in the box.
Ooh.
I will take a picture. My lovely bride and I will be there. And it's a late night for me because, you know, I wake up early to do radio.
Yeah.
I will take a picture in the box at the Kennedy Center. We're seeing the Steve Jobs. There's a Steve Jobs opera. It's called Steve Jobs Revolution, American opera based on the life of Steve Jobs. I'm actually I hear it's pretty great. So we're going to be there. I'll take a picture. I'll put it out on social media, and you can show the world. How's that?
Booyah.
All right, that's all I got. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. My booyah. That was the weakest booyah. You just want to be done. You want to get to editing. You want to get the videos out.
Booyah.
Thanks for watching today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.